Hi everyone, my name is Karen, this is my channel Rather Be Reading, and today I'm bringing to you a recent reads video. It has been a week once again since I last checked in for a recent reads video. I had a pretty decent reading week, I should say. I managed to complete a total of 6 books. So let's jump into the books first, and then we'll kind of touch on the state of my life and the world in the end part. So let's talk about the books first. So the very first book I completed this past week was The New Guy by Catherine Freeman. This is a book that I received a digital copy from NetGalley in exchange for an honest review. The publication date for it is 13th of March, so it is already out if you're interested in purchasing a copy. This is a romance that is the kind of romance trope where a couple has a one-night stand, don't exchange names or anything, and then discover the next day that they are now work colleagues. But normally in that situation, the man is in the position of power, and I like that it's flipped on its head a little bit in this book, in that it is actually the woman who runs her own company, and the male has come in as a new employee to the company. And so lo and behold, they now work together and have to get over the awkwardness of knowing the fact that they had this one night stand basically the night before they're now working together. I was a little bit disappointed in this one. It wasn't a bad book necessarily. I just felt like a lot of the conversations, the dialogue, and the way that people were responding in these like workplace situations just didn't feel, and I can't even put my finger on exactly what it was about it, but it just didn't ring true. It just felt a little bit inauthentic, and so it really took me out of the story a lot of the time, because I was just thinking, no one's like doing that or saying that or like responding like that. So that threw me off a little bit. And then completely unrelated to the book, but I do just want to say, I don't understand why on the cover, which should be up here, you can see, like if you kind of look closely, that the couple that's on the cover, the female is depicted as having like brown or like black hair, when it is commented about 1 million times throughout this book how the main female character has red hair. So I really don't understand why the cover has a different hair color. But anyway, unrelated. So that was just okay for me. I ended up giving that one 3 stars. I then read Gemini by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. This is the second book in the Illuminae files, the sequel to Illuminae. This one is set directly after the events of Illuminae, but following different characters than what we followed in Illuminae. And I really enjoyed this. At first, I wasn't sure whether I was enjoying this, because it was different, but at the same time, kind of the same. And I, like, in the ways that it was different, I was like, oh, I don't know, is this like too kind of like tropey? Because it does have a bit of a, I would describe this book as being Die Hard in space. And at first I didn't know how I felt about that. But then as the story went on, I came to discover that no, I'm really into that. And I will also say that I don't know if it's Amy Kaufman or Jay Kristoff, but one of them is clearly a Buffy fan, because there is a very clear piece of dialogue, or like a phrase that comes from that world, the Buffyverse as it is known, that is used throughout this whole, I didn't notice it, I don't think, in Illuminae, but I definitely noticed it in this one. And so that tickled me a little bit as well. So, yeah, I enjoyed this. It didn't quite hit the mark for me compared to Illuminae, but I did still really enjoy it, and I ended up giving this one 4 stars. And I then read, lo and behold, Obsidian by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. Fun fact, I don't know if you can see, let me get up a bit closer. Can you see how chewed the corner of this book is? One of my cats has had a good old gnaw on this one. So this is, again, set following the events of the second book, but it's kind of an amalgamation of So the first two books, the events follow each other, like they directly are as a result of each other, but then this book kind of brings those, is a follow-on again, but kind of brings those two events more like together. That doesn't make sense, but I hope you kind of know what I'm trying to say. I enjoyed this. I had some problems with this. I should say I had a problem with this, but I can't, and it's the same like when I said about Illuminate, the problems that I have with these, I cannot talk about without spoiling the books. So I don't know what to say about that, but I did enjoy the characters. I enjoyed the story. Again, this one was again not quite as good as the previous two, but still really enjoyable. So I gave this a 3.75. So it went Illuminate 4.25, Gemini 4, Obsidian 3.75. But I did overall really enjoy the trilogy, and I'm surprised by how much I enjoyed it. So glad to have that under my belt. I then listened on audio to Lost Girls by Martha Hall Kelly. I just realized I didn't write down the narrator for either of the audiobooks that I read this week, so I will have the narrators on the screen for you guys, because this one will probably take up the whole screen, because this book in particular has 3 different narrators, so I will have those on the screen for you guys. So Lost Girls by Martha Hall Kelly is the sequel to Lilac Girls, which I read, was it at the end of last year or early this year? I think it might have been this year. And Lilac Girls is a World War II historical fiction, and there was a character in that, Carolyn Faraday, I think her name is, who is based on a real life person, and this book, Lost Girls, is actually kind of a prequel. Well, it is a prequel to Lilac Girls, and this one is set during World War I as opposed to World War II, and is following both of the books follow multiple characters, but one of the main characters in this one is Carolyn Faraday's mother, Eliza Faraday, who is, again, a real life person. So she's one of the characters. So this one is set, like I said, World War I, focused mainly around the Russian kind of parts, like what was going on in Russia during World War I, to do with the fall of the Tsar and the Russian Revolution and all of that type of thing. I had mixed feelings on this one. It definitely didn't quite reach the heights of Lilac Girls for me, because I really did enjoy Lilac Girls, and I enjoyed this one. It just wasn't quite at the same level. I didn't like the characters as much, and there was one character in particular who does some things, like makes some decisions, that I was just like, I don't understand why we're doing this. Like, it doesn't make sense to me, particularly as the story went on. At the start, you can kind of think, okay, yeah, but then as it goes on, you think, okay, like now this is like going too far, and it just seems like we could easily resolve this issue. So I don't know, that got a little bit too much for me, but I really liked, Martha Hall Kelly does a really great job of depicting the time period and kind of the setting. I think she does a really great job with that. So I did enjoy this one. I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. I then also listened on audio to The Girl Who Drank the Moon by Kelly Barnhill. Again, narrator will be on the screen for you guys. This is a middle grade, so it is the day that I'm recording this, the 28th, and I believe I picked this up on the 26th. Was my first book that I've managed to pick up for middle grade March. I have another book that I had on hold, which is currently available soon, but I don't think is going to come off hold in time for me to read it. If it comes off hold like this weekend, then I'll try squeeze that in Monday, Tuesday, this coming week, to get it in for the rest of March, so that I can have completed 2 books. Although, having said that, anyway, this is the only book so far that I've managed to complete for middle grade March. So this is the story of there's a little town, I guess you would call it, that sacrifice a child, like a baby, basically every year to this evil witch that lives in the forest. The forest is really dangerous, and there's a lot of bad things going on, but if they sacrifice a child every day to this witch, then that like helps the town. And so they sacrifice a baby. They basically take a baby into the woods every year and leave it there for the witch to like eat or kill or whatever. However, the witch is actually good. She's not evil, and she doesn't understand why this town is abandoning a baby in the forest every year. And so she's actually taking the babies and taking them through the forest to the other side, to villages or whatever that are on the other side of this forest, and finding them new homes. And she does this every year until one year the baby is a little girl named Luna, and what she does with the babies to like help nourish them on the journey through the forest is she feeds them starlight. However, with Luna, when she takes her, she accidentally feeds Luna moonlight, which makes Luna imbued with magic. And so instead of taking her to a family on the other side of, like, you know, to a new village, she basically decides to raise Luna because now Luna has magic. And then it's basically about that story. There's a lot more actually involved. That's the premise I knew and all you really need to know, but there is a whole lot more to this story even than that, which I had a really fun time kind of discovering as I listened to this. This is just such a fun, like, whimsical, but really enjoyable, but like talks about some like really interesting kind of issues as well. It's almost kind of found family in a way. There is my favorite character is the little dragon who I think it's Firion. He's my favorite character, so adorable. And it was just, I really enjoyed my listening/reading experience reading that one, and I ended up giving that 4.25 stars. Definitely really enjoyed that one. And then the final book that I completed over this past week was Lady Helen and the Dark Day's Deceit by Alison Goodman. This is the third and final book in the Lady Helen trilogy. This is historical fiction set in the Regency period. We're following Helen, who is a like noble lady or teen. She's like 17, I think, at the start type of age. And she discovers at the start that she has these abilities that basically mean that she is meant to fight demons, and there's this kind of organization, you know, within London that fight these kind of like demon creatures, and she has the ability to fight them and gets kind of involved in that world, and that's what this trilogy is about. I've really enjoyed this trilogy, really enjoyed this one as well, the conclusion. I do think that this one was a little bit slower than the previous books. It took kind of a while to really get going, get into, like, you know, because we've already had the previous two books and we're really flowing into the conclusion in this. When it starts off a bit slow, you're just like, come on, we've been waiting for two books, like, let's get to this conclusion. And then I will say that I thought that the conclusion was a little bit anticlimactic at one point, but then it kind of kept building almost in a way, and it actually did end up being quite satisfying. The only thing I was a little bit disappointed was I did want a little bit more from the outcome of a particular storyline, which I don't really want to get into because I don't want to accidentally spoil anything by like insinuating anything, but I did overall really enjoy this. I gave this one 3.75 stars. So those are the books that I read. To quickly touch on what I'm currently reading, I'm currently reading Murder in Mississippi by John Safran. So if you saw my TBR, then you know that I pulled from my TBR teacup, and the challenge from the Around the in 52 Books challenge that I pulled out was to read a book with a mode of transportation. And the book that was on there for that was Remember Me by Sophie Kinsella. And I'd said very confidently in that video, oh, I haven't checked off that challenge. Then when I did my first, I think it was recent reads for the month, I had mentioned that I was going to redraw from the TBR teacup because I had another book on my TBR for the month that would complete that challenge. Then come to realize when I actually checked my spreadsheet that I had already checked off that challenge in like the first month of the year, and I didn't need to do that challenge at all. Anyway, but the new one that I pulled out was to read a book with a place name in the title. And the book that I had marked down for that was Death Comes to Pemberley. And I'd kind of mentioned that I didn't know whether that counted because Pemberley is a fictional place. And I was kind of going back and forth with myself. And yes, I think if anyone else said, oh, I'm picking this and it's a fictional place, I would not like bat an eyelash. But I just couldn't, I wanted to be really, I'm just so strict on myself. And I wanted it to be like a proper place. So I decided to replace Death Comes to Pemberley. So I didn't redraw. I'm still doing that challenge. I'm just using a different book for the challenge, which is this one, Murder in Mississippi, because Mississippi is a place. That was really long-winded to explain that I'm currently reading this. So this is non-fiction true crime. John Safran is an Australian radio personality, I guess kind of comedian you would call him. I'm not super familiar with him. I know who he is and I'm like kind of vaguely heard of him, but I'm never really listened to any of his radio shows or seen any of his documentaries or anything, but he's very fascinated with and talks a lot about, and does a lot of his documentaries and things are about race. And this crime that this book is following is in one of his documentaries that he was doing about race, he interviewed a man who was a white, like the leader of like a white supremacist group. And then later on, like followed, like, I don't know how long later, like a couple of years later or whatever it was, that leader of the white supremacist group was murdered by a black man. And so this is him looking at that case. I'm on page 105, so, you know, I've read like maybe a quarter of this, so it's like 370 pages, so just over a quarter. The writing style of this is very different to any other kind of nonfiction or like true crime that I've read previously, and it is taking me a little bit to get into, and I can't decide yet whether I like it or don't like it. So I'm kind of reserving judgment on this at the moment until I really get into kind of the meat more of the story. But that is the book that I'm currently reading. So let's just like quickly touch on the state of the world. I hope that everyone is staying safe. Where I live in Australia, in Adelaide, which is the capital of South Australia, is the state that I live in. Our state at the moment is not too bad. We're one of the states with the fewer cases. So we do have a lot of restrictions. I've been working from home. I think I mentioned that in last week's video. I am working from home. We have had closed down a lot of like non-essential services, like that type of thing. However, you may have noticed I have had my hair done. So I actually had my hair done this morning. I already had an appointment booked, and hairdressers have not been closed down. And if my appointment had been at like a regular salon, I possibly wouldn't have gone, but my hairdresser actually does her hairdressing out of her home. It's like a home salon, and so it was just me and her in there, so I wasn't as concerned as what I maybe would have been if it had been anything else. But I am basically social distancing as much as possible, and I hope that everyone else is just staying safe wherever you are in the world, is doing everything possible, and that everyone is doing okay mentally as well as physically. I know from like everything I'm seeing that there's a lot of like anxiety out in the world right now, and I think that's affected me. I don't suffer from like an anxiety disorder or anything like that, but I mean, everybody gets anxious about different things at times, and I have definitely had some, it sounds dumb, like some dreams lately that I definitely think are like stress, like anxiety dreams. I had a couple of dreams lately where I've been running late for flights, like for a plane, and I had one recently where I lost my wallet, like dreaming about like weird things like that are like stressful, like I'm stressed in the dreams. And I think that's definitely like a flow on from definitely a feeling of not just myself being anxious, but like a lot of anxiety in the community and like, you know, out in the world that, you know, you kind of get pulled into a little bit as well. So I just want to say I hope everyone is staying safe and staying healthy, both physically and mentally, and I hope that you guys are all doing well. But yeah, that's my recent reads. I would love to chat with you guys in the comments down below. Please let me know how you guys are doing, what you guys have been reading. If you've read any of these books, let me know your thoughts on them. Please like this video if you liked it. Please subscribe to my channel if you want to see more from me. That is all I have for this video today. Bye guys.